Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION@CUENDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The Herald Scotland on Wednesday the 2nd of April 2025. From the news section. Fire crews return to site of massive blaze in Kilpatrick Hills. This article has been written by Jodie Harrison and it's being read by me, Corey. Fire crews have returned to battle a wildfire which broke out in the hills behind Glasgow late on Tuesday afternoon. 2 crews were sent to fight the blaze in the Kilpatrick Hills this morning after abandoning efforts to contain the flames when darkness fell last night. The large-scale fire was visible for several miles, with flames leaping into the night sky. It comes after the Scottish Fire and Rescue Services, SFRS, warned of an extreme risk of wildfires after days of dry spring weather created tinderbox conditions in the hills. The blaze near Dumbarton is the second to break out in recent weeks, and could potentially herald further fires to come if the weather does not change. A Scottish Fire and Rescue Service spokesperson said, "We were alerted at 5:29 p.m. on Tuesday the 1st of April to reports of a fire in the open between Kilpatrick Hills and Stockymuir Road in Mulgai. Operations Control mobilised 1 appliance to the scene and, on arrival, crews found a well-developed fire on moorland involving grass and heather. Firefighting crews requested a further 3 pumps to support them. 2 pumps are still in attendance as of Wednesday the 2nd of April. Late on Tuesday evening, Evelyn Tweed, MSP for Stirling, posted on social media, "I am aware there is currently a fire on the Kilpatrick Hills, which can be seen from parts of the Stirling constituency. Emergency services are aware this is the most recent of a number of fires locally in recent weeks." SFRS issued the warning alongside the Scottish Wildfire Forum. Both are urging members of the public not to light fires outdoors in areas throughout the country. The warning, which is in place until Monday, is the 3rd issued in 2025. SFRS Group Commander Gary Douglas said, "During any period of heightened risk, fires can ignite easily, spread very quickly, and burn with a high intensity. At this time of year in early spring, we typically have a large volume of dead, bone-dry vegetation across large areas of countryside. This essentially acts as a fuel for fire. There are currently vast areas that are tinder dry and vulnerable, which provides all the ingredients for fire to take hold and spread. Human behaviour is the cause of most wildfires in Scotland, so it is imperative we all act responsibly while enjoying the outdoors, especially over the coming days of predicted sunshine. By following some simple but key advice, we can significantly reduce the risk of wildfires occurring." That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Jodie Harrison and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland on Wednesday the 2nd of April 2025. From the news section. Polish Yard says Scottish ferry order most valuable in its history. This article has been written by Jodie Harrison and it's being read by me, Connie. The Polish shipyard contracted to build the next generation of small CalMac ferries says the order is the largest in its history, once the number of ships and value of the series is taken into account. Remontoa Shipbuilding in Dansk has been awarded the brief to build 7 new electric ferries for Scotland, which will ply routes around the country once they are complete. The European yard beat off competition from the publicly owned Ferguson Marine Yard in Port Glasgow to win the order, and was announced as the preferred bidder last month. After signing the contract, Remontoa Shipbuilding said that its offer was the highest evaluated based on both price and quality criteria. In the race for the contract, the Polish yard was picked over renowned shipyards from the Netherlands, Turkey and the UK. 6 of the ferries ordered will be able to take 150 passengers and 24 cars on board at any one time, while the 7th will carry 250 passengers and 16 cars. Delivery of the first ferry is scheduled for the third quarter of 2027, with the entire contract expected to be completed by the first quarter of 2029. In a statement, the yard said, "This is the largest order from the construction of a series of passenger ships in the history of our shipyard in terms of the number of units and the value of the entire contract. These will not be the first vessels built in our shipyard for this ship owner. Between 2005 and 2011, we delivered 3 ferries, designed to serve passengers and car traffic between Glasgow and other major cities on the west coast of Scotland, as well as the islands of the Western Islands archipelago. An order from a returning client is confirmation of our competence, experience, and innovative approach to the tasks at hand. The fully electric Loch-class ferries are due to serve the Isle of Bute, Mull, Loch Fyne, Raasay and Gigha. They constitute Phase 1 of the Small Vessel Replacement Programme, SVRP, with procurement of 3 further ferries under Phase 2 due to be put to competitive tender later this year. Remontoa Shipbuilding is a long-established company in Poland and has been in operation for almost 80 years. And the ships built at the yard were vessels for the Soviet Navy, as well as fishing vessels and ferries. It is currently working on a series of minesweepers for the Polish Navy. It is also building a hybrid passenger car ferry ordered by Norwegian ship owner Torghatten Nord. The 9th vessel is built for this ship owner. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Jodie Harrison, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 2nd of April 2025. From the news section. RNLI saved twice as many lives in Scotland in 2024. This article has been written by Gabriel McKay, and it's being read by me, Corey. The RNLI saved twice as many lives in Scotland in 2024 as the previous year. New figures have revealed the 4th busiest year in its history. Lifeboats were launched by the 46 stations around Scotland's coast 1,182 times, with 36 lives saved. The RNLI defines that was an incident where it not for the intervention of the organisation, emergency services or a third party, someone would have died. One man, Chris, who was rescued by the Macduff RNLI, said, "I'd gone under at least twice, and knew I was close to death. Then I saw the helicopter. Then the Macduff team searching for me. I knew if I could hang on, I'd probably be okay. A couple of minutes later, I was pulled on the boat, and the guys set about keeping me alive." Across the UK and Ireland, RNLI lifeboats were launched 9,100 times in 2024, and the charity has put out a fundraising call for its national fundraising event. The RNLI is staffed mostly by unpaid volunteers, and had running costs of over £190 million in 2023. It has launched the Mayday Mile, in which participants are challenged to cover a mile a day for the month of May, with every penny raised helping to make sure that the charity's lifesavers have everything they need to keep people safe this summer and beyond. Chris Briddy, RNLI volunteer at Queensferry RNLI lifeboat station, said, "Usually it's our crew heading out to respond to Mayday calls, but now we're the ones asking for help. Thousands of people get into danger on and around the water each year, and need our help. But everything we do is only possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. It's clear from these new figures that demand for our services remains high, with our lifesavers dropping everything to run to the lifeboat station when the call comes. We're now heading towards our busiest time of year, so we're putting out our call for help to raise the funds which will help keep our life-saving service going today, and allow us to be there when we're needed most." That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Gabriel McKay, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 2nd of April 2025. From the news section. Top Gun and Batman star Val Kilmer dead at 65 from cancer. This article has been written by Jodie Harrison, and it's being read by me, Corey. Top Gun star Val Kilmer has died at the age of 65, his daughter has said. In a statement to the New York Times, his daughter, Mercedes, said the actor had died from pneumonia. He rose to fame starring alongside Tom Cruise in the 1986 hit Top Gun. Kilmer would go on to play Batman in 1995's Batman Forever, and received critical acclaim for his portrayal of musician Jim Morrison in the 1991 film The Doors. Kilmer's final acting role was a cameo on the 2022 blockbuster sequel Top Gun Maverick. "I just want to say that was pretty emotional," Tom Cruise told Jimmy Kimmel in 2023 about the cameo. "I've known Val for decades, and for him to come back and play that character, he's such a powerful actor that he instantly became that character again." Kilmer had been diagnosed with throat cancer in 2014. Discussing his diagnosis and recovery in his 2020 memoir, I'm Your Huckleberry and Amazon Prime documentary, Val. He underwent both radiotherapy and chemotherapy, as well as a tracheostomy, which damaged his vocal cords. "I absolutely am sounding much worse than I feel," Kilmer said in the documentary. "I can't speak without plugging this hole in his throat. You have to make the choice to breathe or to eat. It's an obstacle that is very persistent with whoever sees me." In a post on Instagram, actor Josh Gad paid tribute to the action star. He said, "R.I.P. Val Kilmer. Thank you for defining so many of the movies of my childhood. You truly were an icon." Actor Josh Brolin, son of James Brolin, said he was going to miss his pal. "You were a smart, challenging, brave, uber-creative firecracker," he said in an Instagram post. "There's not a lot left of those. I hope to see you up there in the heavens when I eventually get there. Until then, amazing memories, lovely thoughts." Kilmer married Joan Whaley in 1988, whom he met while working on the film Willow. The couple had 2 children before divorcing in 1996. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Jodie Harrison, and it was read by me, Corey.
From the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 2nd of April 2025, from the Voices section. Prestwick Airport politics to the fore as bidder emerges. This article is by Ian McConnell. It was somewhat disappointing last week to hear a Labour MSP banging the political drum over the future of Prestwick Airport. South Scotland Labour MSP Colin Smith's comments came after First Minister John Swinney confirmed that he was aware of an active bid for Prestwick Airport, which was bought by the Scottish Government for £1 in 2013. Asked by Scottish Parliament Economy and Fair Work Committee convener Mr Smith if he was aware of an active bid, the First Minister replied, "I am. That's a matter that's currently under very active consideration." Mr Swinney, answering the question at the conveners group at Holyrood last Wednesday, added, "I cannot quite recall exactly the stage those discussions are at, but if there is more information I can share with the group, I will write to the presiding officer and Mr Smith on that. But these are very active and live issues at the present moment." Asked if the government still intends to return the airport to private hands, the First Minister replied, "That's the government's policy intention." With Prestwick Airport having been in the Scottish Government's hands since 2013, of course, the revelation of an active bid represents a significant development. That said, while there were no details last week of the suitor or its proposals with which to gauge the chances of the approach leading to a deal, it is really no great surprise that the airport has attracted fresh bid interest. The airport, known officially as Glasgow Prestwick Airport, revealed in November that it had made a 5th consecutive annual profit. It announced a £3.2 million operating profit for the year to March 31st, 2024. In November 2023, it had unveiled an operating profit of £2.1 million for the 12 months to March 31st, 2023, up from £1.9 million in the previous financial year. And as the Herald revealed in February, the airport has enjoyed some significant success with its cargo operations and has major ambitions to build on this. Nico LaRue, who heads the airport's cargo operations, told the Herald in an interview that Prestwick Airport expects to more than treble cargo revenues to in excess of £10 million a year, viewing e-commerce flights as a game changer after winning major business from Hong Kong. And he highlighted potential for Scottish seafood and whisky exports to be transported on the return legs from Prestwick to Hong Kong, and early success in this endeavour. The interview with Mr LaRue took place just hours before the overnight arrival of the first Hong Kong air cargo HKAC flight at Prestwick in February. Mr LaRue, who has spent decades working in the air cargo industry, said, "This new business is going to be a game changer for the airport. It will totally transform the airport, basically." Cargo revenues at the airport totaled $3.228 million in the year to March 31st, 2024. Mr LaRue revealed his expectation that cargo revenues would be more than treble that level in the airport's financial year to March 31st, 2026, on the back of recent new business wins. He confirmed such an increase would take annual cargo revenues into double-digit millions of pounds. Mr LaRue, in February, as we went airside at Prestwick, put the number of jobs supported by the airport at the aerospace cluster at around 4,000. This excludes the workforce employed directly by the airport, which was 354 in February, and set to rise to around 400, with the ambitious expansion plans for the cargo operations. The cluster includes Storm Aviation, GE Aerospace's Caledonian operation, and Spirit Aerosystems, among a raft of big names in the industry, as well as Ryanair's major engineering facility. The key thing that everyone should bear in mind, of course, when it comes to Prestwick Airport, is the major employment it provides both directly and indirectly, and the scale of the aerospace cluster in and around it. And it was good to hear Mr. Smith emphasize the importance of any buyer maximising employment. However, it seemed he could not resist politicking over the situation. It has undoubtedly been lamentable over the years to see Prestwick Airport used as a political football. Mr. Smith said, "It's more than a decade since Prestwick Airport was bought by the Scottish Government, which claimed that its plan was to return the airport to the private sector quickly. But every preferred bidder appointed by the government has ended in the same outcome, which is no sale. It has indeed been a long time since the rescue of Prestwick Airport, after which the Scottish Government advanced £43.4 million of loans. However, this period has included the coronavirus pandemic. And in any case, it would seem foolish to rush the sale of such an important strategic asset, especially given that it has been profitable for so long now. It is also crucial not to sell to a party with intentions which would jeopardize the direct employment provided by the airport or the jobs and activity supported by it." Mr. Smith went on, "Prestwick workers have been stuck in limbo for years waiting for a deal to materialize, only to get knocked back to square one time and time again, and we can only hope that this time it will be different. I welcome any discussions on an active bid for the airport, but it is vital that any sale secures and grows the jobs at Prestwick and sees the tens of millions of pounds worth of loans from the taxpayer to the airport paid back." He added, "Thousands of jobs are on the line in any deal, both direct at the airport but also across Ayrshire. So there is simply no room to get this wrong. We cannot abandon Prestwick and let it become yet another failed industrial intervention from the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government needs to show that in any sale there is a plan for the future of this vital strategic asset, which I believe has huge potential to grow." There seemed to be quite a lot to unpack in Mr. Smith's comments. Thankfully, there is no suggestion that anyone is going to abandon Prestwick Airport, and any such danger has hopefully subsided as the volume levels of critics of the Scottish Government's rescue of this key asset have been reduced by its consistent profitability. And it is difficult to see how the Scottish Government's rescue of Prestwick Airport is going to become a failed industrial intervention. The intervention saved many jobs and continues to support much direct and indirect employment, and has surely been a positive in developing and maintaining the aerospace cluster in and around the airport. Mr. Smith said he believes the airport has huge potential to grow. This seems like a fair enough view, and hopefully he is right. However, Mr. Smith seems on the one hand unhappy about the length of time a sale is taking, while on the other believing the Scottish Government needs to show that in any sale there is a plan for the future of this vital strategic asset. Surely he himself is highlighting a very good reason for treading warily and taking time before agreeing a sale, ensuring the future of the airport and the surrounding cluster is not harmed by a deal and is hopefully helped. Article was by Ian McConnell.
From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 3rd of April, from the news section. Calmac ferry problems continue as return of 2 vessels delayed. Article by Mark McDougall. Ferry operator Calmac has announced further delays to the return to service of 2 of its vessels due to repair works taking longer than expected. MV Caledonian Isles, which serves the main Arran route and is one of the largest ferries in the company's fleet, is now expected to return to service at the end of May rather than in April as expected. Meanwhile, MV Hebrides, which serves North, Eust and Harris, is expected to be out of service until April 22nd, weeks after the original return date of April 6. MV Caledonian Isles was supposed to have returned to the water following repairs last November, but this was set back by the discovery of steel deformation and needs to be replaced both stern tube bearings. The company has said extensive repairs to the steel have now been completed, but the shafts require further machining in Denmark before sailing can resume. Duncan Mackison, Calmac chief executive, said, "We know MV Caledonian Isles' ongoing absence has caused significant disruption on Arran and on the rider network, and that's why we've taken steps to ensure that when she returns, she provides a resilient and reliable service. The now complete and extensive steel repairs have been subject to vigorous inspections, and we've confirmed that the root cause of the steel deformation has been resolved with no further signs of deformation. The shafts have been subjected to further checks from engine to propeller, and any issues identified and remedied as we go. We're in regular contact with Arran's Ferry Committee and want to assure the local community that we expect MV Caledonian Isles back soon." Meanwhile, the return of MV Hebrides is delayed by the need for 6 days of additional work to the vessel's bow, visor and stern ramp. Mr. Mackison said the situation was made worse by a fresh delay to the delivery of MV Isle of Islay, the first of 4 new ferries being built at the Semer shipyard in Turkey. Delivery of the new vessel had originally been expected at the end of 2024, but delays had caused by labour shortages and bad weather mean handover is not as expected before the end of the second quarter of 2025. He said, "I know that this delay will cause our customers even more inconvenience, and I apologise for this. The situation has been compounded by the delays, which we know are due to issues outside of anyone's control, with the delivery of MV Isle of Islay to service Islay. If the new vessel had been with us on time, we'd have had an additional major vessel in the fleet for a large part of winter, and would not need to deploy one of the MV Isle of Arran or MV Lord of Isles to Islay during MV Finlagen's overhaul. I would like to thank the communities and customers for their understanding and patience during this latest period of disruption, and we will continue to provide the best service possible for our customers using the vessels we have available. MV Glensanix and MV Alfred will continue to provide services from Troon to Bodrick on Arran until the MV Caledonian Isles returns to cover the Ardros and Bodrick route." Calmac added it was liaising with Pentland Ferries on crew availability, with the intention of maximising passenger numbers on the 428 on all MV Alfred sailings until the end of May. And that article was written by Mark McDougall and read by me, Aaron. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 3rd of April, from the news section. George Square redevelopment timetable, when will it close? Article by Gabriel McKay. Major works to improve George Square in Glasgow will begin in the coming weeks, with the landmark to be shut off and statues removed. As a part of the Avenues project, the square outside the city chambers will be completely revamped, with high-quality stone, new trees, informal play areas for children and sensory gardens in the eastern areas, a water feature, a raised lawn platform, bespoke sheltered seating, and featured lighting. The hoardings which will surround the civic space will begin being erected on April 14th, with panels to showcase Glasgow's past and present and illustrate what the development will look like when it's finished. In May, the statues in the square will be removed for restoration and storage, with the main work to begin from the start of June. The square will be closed off during the works, but there will be pedestrian access around its outer pavements, while viewing spaces on the east and west sides of the hoardings will give the opportunity to watch the development in the works. Councillor Agnes Miller, convener for City Centre Recovery at Glasgow City Council, said, "George Square's restoration is a huge and historic project, and so much work has already gone into its planning and design. Once complete next year, Glasgow will have a modern square with more greenery, improved lighting and drainage infrastructure and a high quality stone finish to replace the current tarmac. This will be a monumentous month for the city, with the erection of the hoardings in less than a fortnight's time, firing the starting pistol on a real acceleration of the works. George Square is built into the DNA of this city, and Glaswegians have wanted to see its restoration for decades. In just a couple of weeks, they'll see the start to happen. Of course, that means the square will be closed to the public once the hoardings start going up, and that will be an inconvenience. But by next autumn, Glaswegians will have a new square on par with many of our international peers, one they can be proud of, and one which is fitting of a city of our standing. Glasgow City Council said it was committed to ensuring businesses and residents are kept informed of any significant disruption, with progress reports also to be made publicly aware. As reported by our sister title, The Glasgow Times, the timescale marks a delay to what was originally planned. The programme for the George Square project, which has been published on the Glasgow City Council website in June last year, says between January and March this year, 11 bronze statues would be removed and transported to an adequate storage facility before being refurbished between July 2025 and 2027. The projected end date for the works on the George Square has not been pushed back, and it remains scheduled to reopen in autumn of 2026. And that article was written by Gabriel McKay and read by me, Aaron. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 3rd of April, from the news section. Illegal puppy imports growing concern for vets in Scotland. Article by Mark McDougall. 1 in 3 Scottish vets have reported seeing puppies brought into the country illegally in the last year. British Veterinary Association BVA is growing concern about the risk to public health from this, with diseases such as rabies potentially arriving in Scotland. The group is now calling for the UK government to put a stop to unlawful puppy smuggling with the Animal Welfare, Dogs, Cats and Ferrets Bill that is currently on the table. The bill passed its second reading in Commons in November, has been awaiting a date for the committee stage ever since then. MP Danny Chambers hosted a round table on the impact of the legislation on Thursday and explained how it would ban the import of pets with illegal mutilations such as crop tears and secure public health by preventing diseases being brought into the UK. French Bulldog puppies are one of the most common breed vet reports concerns about, with the BVA data revealed 48% of those who had seen suspicious puppies refer to the breed. Vets detailed poor explanations of how the puppy was acquired. In fact, they were too young to be imported. Foreign microchips or puppies whose age didn't match passport information as an examples of how they became well aware it could be an illegally imported dog. British Veterinary Association President Dr. Elizabeth Moulineaux said, "These are new figures from our members who work in small animal practice, show that puppy smugglers are continuing to use the unscrupulous methods to bring puppies into the country and duping new owners into buying sick or poorly socialised pets. Illegally imported puppies have often been poorly bred without the correct vaccinations or necessary health checks needed, which can result in life-threatening illnesses for the pups and heartache for their new owners. In the last few years, we have seen measures to stop puppy smuggling come close to becoming a law, but disappointingly failing to cross the line. We're urging government to progress the Vet and MP Danny Chambers bill, which has broad support from vets, animal welfare charities and parliamentarians and the general public, into law in this parliamentary session." And that article was written by Mark McDougall and read by me, Aaron.
From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 5th of April 2025, from the Voices section. Stop the fighting. Scotland's two great cities need to pull together. Column written by John McClellan. The last vehicle to roll out of the Maldivich factory in Granton was before the First World War ended, one of the first casualties in the sorry saga of motor manufacturing in Scotland. From the end of the Hillman Imps Linwood Home in 1981 to the British Leyland Truck and Tractor plant in Bathgate, which closed in 1986, now only remembered as lines in a Proclaimer song, they illustrate a core weakness in the Scottish economy that, with the honourable exception of whisky, manufacturing at scale is notable for its relative absence. Alexander Dennis is another exception, the bus manufacturer with a large plant in Larbert, now owned by the Canadian-based NFI Group, and the impact of President Donald Trump's 25% tariff on all foreign motor vehicles entering the US is a serious threat to our workforce of nearly 2,000 across the UK and an estimated supply chain employing over 6,000 people. Maldivich, Britain's oldest surviving purpose-built car factory, was well ahead of its time. Too far, as it happened, as a producer of electric vehicles, just as the rest of the car industry decided the internal combustion engine was the way to go. Now the plant will form the shell for 28 townhouses built by the Lar Housing Trust as part of the Granton Regeneration Scheme. But the spirit of innovation is alive and well about a mile away at Crewe Toll, where the Leonardo factory employs 1,800 highly skilled people producing defence systems for, amongst others, the US Army's Apache helicopters and the Sea Spray Raider for the US Coast Guard, which will presumably be part of the ongoing negotiations about trade tariffs between the US and UK governments. That countermeasure systems produced in Crewe Toll are apparently fitted to Air Force One, the US President's official aeroplane, might be something UK negotiators should drop into the conversations. At the time of writing, the full impact of the new Trump tariff regime was still being absorbed, and while none of it is good, deals may well be done with shield British manufacturing from the worst effects. But whisky and salmon apart, the Scottish economy is largely protected from direct impacts because of its reliance on services and tourism. What is usually a weakness is in this instance a strength. That is not to minimise the indirect effects of what could be a £600 million hit for whisky distillers and, if Americans stopped eating Scottish salmon, possibly a further £200 million. Not far short of £1 billion out of GDP of £218 billion in the 2023 would be one hell of a bath if it came to it. According to Edinburgh City Council's latest Edinburgh by Numbers report, published last month, only 2.7% of the Edinburgh workforce, 10,000 people, is employed in manufacturing, compared to 6.7% in Scotland and 5.5% across 8 comparable UK cities. Reflecting the high-end nature of the produce, Edinburgh's manufacturers punch above their weight and contribute 4.26% of the city's economic output, worth just over £1 billion. The 11.3% employed in financial and insurance, 42,000 workers, are responsible for 27.5% of the local economy, some £7.2 billion. Accommodation and food services accounts for 10.2% of the workforce, 38,000 people, but represents just 3.2% of the total Edinburgh economy, £84 million, possibly reflecting the low wages common in the sector. Americans are by some way the biggest spenders, and in 2023 they stayed for 2.6 million nights in Edinburgh and spent £463 million when they were here. Next was France with 0.9 million nights and spending £100 million. Clearly, a big drop in the number of American tourists, perhaps out of a misplaced fear of hostility abroad, could have a serious impact on a large number of employees, but the kind of Americans who come here do so for specific reasons, like heritage and golf. They are premium customers, less likely to be put off by notions of animosity, and of course they are not all Trump supporters. With an even greater need to encourage them to visit, a recent Edinburgh Council proposal to spend £320,000 over 4 years on promotional materials for the Forever Edinburgh marketing campaign, aimed at potential visitors, was not raiding the pockets of residents, as the anti-growth Green Party put it, but a relatively small investment in the boosting important source of employment, which seems eminently sensible after the events of the week in Washington, D.C. The employment and output figures also put recent comments by Kevin Rush, the Glasgow City Region's Director of Regional Economic Growth, into some context. In an interview with the Herald, he claimed that Glasgow City Region is the only functioning regional economy in Scotland, which raised a few eyebrows in a city which, in 2022, according to Statista, had a gross domestic product of just over £28 billion compared to Glasgow's £25.8 billion. And the EY Items Club's Scottish forecast at the turn of the year, predicting growth of 1.8% in Edinburgh and 1.7% in Glasgow, suggested the poor chap needed a lie down. Those growth forecasts will need updating, but this is an unfortunate byproduct of creating two city region deals in the central belt that, at a time of such economic uncertainty in Glasgow and Edinburgh, appear to be in competition with each other, rather than collaborating to take on places like the northwest in England, where the Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, can always be relied upon to talk a good game. At the moment, there isn't a vehicle for that to happen, and the closest it came was when two Lord Provosts, Glasgow's Pat Lally and Eric Milligan in Edinburgh, considered a joint Olympic bid in the 1990s. It helped that both were stalwarts of the same party. Scotland will not be immune to the effects of Trump's tariffs, and pulling together might prevent what few factories we have falling Maldovich into history. Or housing. And that was a comment piece by John McClellan. From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 5th of April 2025, from the Voices section. Trump the Tariff Tedium with a Dose of Diary Delights by Lorne Jackson. Trump Tale. Even though it's not quite Easter, the President of the United States of America has turned himself into some sort of giant Easter bunny. Sporting a cute fluffy tail, he's been scattering eggs and happiness everywhere he goes. Though, to be slightly more accurate, it's tariffs and misery that Trump is scattering. Also, we made up the bit about his fluffy tail because it went well with the metaphor we were trying to construct. Donald thinks tariffs are tariff, even though most economists disagree and gloomily predict everything from another Great Depression to a triumphant return of Sauron and the dark hordes of Mordor. There isn't much to be cheerful about, apart from the diary, of course. Luckily, we don't put any tariffs on our ticklish tales, so you can enjoy the following classic yarns from our archive for the price of a Herald newspaper. Bargain. Barroom badinage. A chapping a Glasgow boozer once announced that his wife had bagged a job with the patrol board. When his pals expressed surprise at the announcement, he added, "She was a natural for it, as she never lets anyone finish a sentence." Talking Bull. A reader concerned about crime reported a theft to us. Hopefully he also got in touch with the cops, who are better at solving crimes in the diary. He informed us that the thieves had robbed his local shop of 20 cases of Red Bull. Added a reader, "I don't know how they sleep at night." Hong Kong Fooey. Dundee author of detective fiction David Aiken once wondered if fact is stranger than fiction. The popular crime scribe revealed that he was threatened by two men in a highway underpass while visiting Hong Kong. Suddenly, an old woman appeared, chopped one of the potential muggers on the jugular, turning the chap's legs to rubber, and blew in a whistle which immediately summoned two police officers who grabbed the second mugger. The old woman then removed her disguise, explaining she was actually a young policewoman, and added, "I was the one who was supposed to be mugged." David was left wondering why they thought he was an easier target. Circular logic. The following story confirms what the diary has always suspected about Scotland's new towns. In the foreword to the book Livingston Lives by archivist Emma Peaty, retired local GP Frank Stewart wrote, "There is a tale told about the planning of Livingston New Town that whenever the designers stopped for a cup of coffee, a round mark appeared on the road plan and a corresponding roundabout duly appeared on the ground." Upwardly mobile. I offered the pensioner next door a fiver to have a shot in her Stana stair lift, a reader once phoned to tell us before adding happily, "I think she's going to take me up on it." And that was a diary written by Lorne Jackson. From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 5th of April, from the news section. Firefighters battle wildfires spreading in Galloway, Merrick Hill. Report by Jodie Harrison. People have been advised to avoid an area of one of Scotland's most scenic spots due to a large wildfire which has been burning for more than 12 hours. Emergency services are battling the blaze in Galloway, which was reported around 11:50 p.m. on Friday. The fire is affecting Merrick Hill, Ben Yellery, Glen Truel, and has spread from the Loch Dee areas. Helicopters are being used to tackle the wildfire in Galloway, Well, 2 appliances from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service are in attendance. It comes as the fire service issued a warning of extreme risk of wildfires this week due to dry weather and sunshine. A similar wildfire had been reported in the area on Thursday, covering some 1.5 miles. Group Commander Gary Douglas, a Scottish Fire and Rescue Service tactical advisor, previously said, "During any period of heightened risk, fires can ignite easily, spread very quickly, and burn with high intensity. At this time of year in early spring, we typically have a large volume of dead, bone-dry vegetation across large areas of countryside. This essentially acts as a fuel for fire. There are currently vast areas that are tinder dry and vulnerable, which provides all the ingredients for fire to take hold and spread. Human behaviour is the cause of most wildfires in Scotland, so it's imperative we all act responsibly while enjoying the outdoors, especially over the coming days of predicted sunshine. By following some simple but key advice, we can significantly reduce the risk of wildfire occurring." A Police Scotland spokesperson said, "Emergency services continue to deal with a large wildfire in Galloway, which was reported around 11:50 p.m. on Friday, 4th of April 2025. The blazes affecting Merrick Hill, Benyellery, Glentrula and Loch Dee areas. We are asking people to avoid the area. We will continue to update you." Earlier this week, the fire service warned of an extreme risk of wildfires across all areas of Scotland. It is the 3rd wildfire warning issued by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service this year, as the weather gets warmer and drier. And that report was written by Jodie Harrison. From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 5th of April 2025, from the news section, exclusive. Stena Line blasts poor roads to Cairnryan Ferry Terminal, by Kathleen Nutt. Irish sea ferry operators are pressing the Scottish Government to upgrade the A77 and A75 to the Cairnryan, warning the poor state of the 2 roads is putting lives in danger. Stena Line is committed to the service, but warned the situation had created uncertainty over the scale of its future investment. Both Stena Line and Belfast Harbour have urged the First Minister John Swinney and Transport Secretary Fiona Hislop to make urgent improvements to both roads. The 2 companies are members of the South West Scotland Transport Alliance, SWSTA, which put their points to Ms Hislop during a ferry crossing to Belfast earlier this week. The meeting followed an initial discussion with Mr Swinney during a visit to Crocketford on the A75 last year. The Alliance is currently consulting with local politicians, chambers of commerce and hauliers as part of the SWSTA's Safer, Greener, Better campaign, and will publish its priority list of improvements later this year. Paul Grant, Trade Director, Irish Sea at Stena Line, said, "Our discussions with the Scottish Government are more valuable and productive now than they have been for many years. As was the case when colleagues met the First Minister last year, we know from our meeting that the Cabinet Secretary fully understands the problems being caused by the quality of the A75 and A77. We know that hauliers and other travellers are put off using the ports at Cairnryan because of the poor connections. That's bad for the economy. But this is primarily a safety issue. The simple fact is that people are at risk on the A75 and A77 in their current state. The unfortunate reality is that Stena Line must base its investment decisions on the infrastructure conditions we encounter, and there is no question that the state of these roads placed uncertainty on our future investment." Michael Robinson, Port Director of Belfast Harbour, said, "The importance of the A75 and A77 should not be underestimated. These are critical connections for haulage and tourism. Making them safer and better would undoubtedly help protect lives, jobs and encourage investment. The case for change is clear. We, as part of the SWSTA, are keen to continue working with ministers and politicians from all parties and parliaments to ensure that improvements can be delivered." The Alliance has previously released data showing the competitive disadvantage Scotland faces as a result of the conditions of the roads, including that travelling the same distance, 103 miles on the A75 from Stranraer to the M6, takes around 2 hours and 30 minutes, whereas the same distance on the A55 between competitor Welsh Port Holyhead and the M6 takes only 1 hour and 45 minutes. Polling conducted by the SWSTA has also shown more than 90% of locals want full or partial upgrades of the A75 and A77, with 75% focused on safety. Over 60% believe the roads discourage investment, and around 50% believe they prevent tourism. Almost 75% believe that governments don't understand the needs of South West Scotland. Speaking after the meeting, Ms Hislop said, "The strategic importance of both the A75 and A77 to Scotland's economy is recognised by this government. We value the critical link they provide to the wider markets in the rest of the UK and Europe by connecting to the ports at Cairnryan to the wider trunk road network. In recent weeks, I have chaired the Convention of South of Scotland discussion on transport, met with leaders of Dumfries and Galloway and South Ayrshire councils, had a roundtable discussion with campaigners calling for road improvements to the A75 and A77 in Girvan, and also extended an offer to form a South West Scotland Roads focus group." She added, "On the A77 we have completed 5 major improvements, totalling £64 million, including the £29 million Maybole bypass. In terms of the A75, we have completed 6 major road improvement projects with a total value of over £50 million. She went on to say the government is facing significant pressure on its capital budget, which was affecting its ability to maintain investment in all of Scotland's transport infrastructure. However, she stated that following the allocation of funding from the UK government, we have wasted no time in progressing the design and assessment work to consider options for realigning the A75 trunk road at the villages of Springholm and Crocketford. Stena Line and P&O ferries between them provide 24 daily weekend sailings between Northern Ireland and Scotland. Stena sails between Cairnryan and Belfast, while P&O ferries sail between Cairnryan and Larne. The services represent the only alternative to air travel between the two nations, and are operated on an entirely commercial basis. Between them, they carry about 1.75 million passengers, more than 400,000 cars and over 400,000 freight vehicles annually. A recent independent report commissioned by Dumfries and Galloway, South Ayrshire and Mid and East Antrim councils found that dualling both trunk roads would bring a £5 billion of positive benefits to the UK economy. And the article was an exclusive written by Kathleen Nutt and read by Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 5th of April 2025, from the news section. Swinney to march in New York Tartan Day Parade. Report by Jodie Harrison. Scotland's First Minister will march in New York's annual Tartan Day Parade on Saturday. John Swinney will spend the day touting Scotland's cultural heritage in the US and join the parade's Grand Marshal, actor Alan Cumming, as they walk down the city's 6th Avenue. Expected to do the same will be Scottish Secretary Ian Murray, Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar, and Holyrood Deputy Presiding Officer Annabel Ewing. The First Minister will also attend the first Hoolie in New York, an event laid on by the organisers of the annual Hoolie at the Hydro Show, which celebrates traditional Scottish music, at the famed Carnegie Hall, which was built by and named for Scottish-born industrialist Andrew Carnegie, where Mr Swinney will later host a reception. Mr Swinney is expected to welcome the Renfrewshire Schools Pipe Band and the Atholl Highlanders to New York in the city's Bryant Park, before celebrating Americans of Scottish descent in the Kirkin o' the Tartan service at the 5th Avenue Presbyterian Church. Ahead of the second day of his visit, the First Minister said, "Scottish history and heritage are celebrated the world over and woven into the fabric of the United States. I know this means a great deal to the millions of Americans with Scottish connections." He continued, "I am looking forward to leading Scotland's presence during the Tartan Day Parade alongside Grand Marshal Alan Cumming, and to addressing the audience at a venue named after one of Scotland's most famous sons. Today is a day to celebrate the best of Scotland and to promote the iconic and globally revered culture and heritage we have to offer. I recognise the significance of National Tartan Day, and it is testament to the strength of the Scottish diaspora in the US. Tartan Day and the wider festivities in New York reaffirmed the historic friendship between our two nations, a friendship that is deep and strong and that dates back centuries. We want to continue to celebrate those ties while also shining a spotlight on the vibrant, dynamic and innovative Scotland of today. And that report was written by Jodie Harrison and read by Ian.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 7th of April 2025, from the Voices section. Scottish Airport has much to build upon as bidder emerges. Article written by Ian McConnell. After the many difficult years which businesses in Scotland and throughout the UK have had to endure, one of the last things they would have wanted was to find themselves at the mercy of politicians. However, there could hardly have been a greater gulf between the stability and predictability of operating environment that businesses desire and the world in which they have found themselves. At home, businesses face the major challenge of a hike in employers' national insurance contributions by the Labour government, projected to raise £25 billion a year, effective from April 6th. Of course, they have been dealing with many other challenges in terms of UK political decisions in recent years, not least those arising from the Tories' hard Brexit. This continues to do great damage to the UK economy, as it has done for years now, and of course by extension to the public finances. We should not overlook the effect of the hard Brexit in producing a situation in which Labour, which has bound itself with similar fiscal rules to the Tories, has considered it necessary to bring in that extra £25 billion a year through the employers' national insurance hike. Yet Labour continues to embrace its self-imposed red lines of not rejoining the European Union, single market, or even the customs union. This means the UK continues to be deprived of frictionless trade with its biggest trading partner, and of what was the immensely valuable free movement of people between the country and the European Economic Area. And so the hard Brexit damage to the economy and public finances has continued. On the other side of the Atlantic, of course, we have President Donald Trump and his tariffs. Mr. Trump on Wednesday night revealed that UK imports to the US would face a general 10% tariff after months of keeping everyone on tenterhooks. While the impact of these tariffs will be small in a UK macroeconomic sense relative to the Brexit damage, what happens on this front is obviously crucial to individual businesses and key sectors. And there are obviously also potentially major geopolitical ramifications in Mr. Trump's actions in doling out tariffs to countries around the globe, in which the UK got off relatively lightly compared with many others, and the whole thing will surely not give anyone a sense of predictability or stability. The University of Strathclyde's Fraser of Allender Institute, in its latest economic commentary published last week, downgraded its Scottish growth forecasts to reflect economic conditions in both the UK and the world economy. It now expects growth of 0.9% this year, with expansion accelerating to a modest 1.1% in each of 2026 and 2027. Fraser of Allender declared, "These are downward revisions from our previous estimates, underscoring ongoing concerns over global economic fragility, tighter UK fiscal policy, and lingering inflationary pressures." Mary Spowage, director of Fraser of Allender, said last week, "Economic conditions in 2025 are turbulent and uncertain and are likely to remain so throughout the year. Therefore, the picture is still one of subdued growth. Many of the challenges businesses faced in 2024, from rising costs to policy uncertainty, have not gone away. Added pressures from national insurance changes and geopolitical instability risk dampening confidence and growth further. These tax changes will start to hit businesses next week, with many scaling back plans for workforce expansion and recruitment as a result." Elsewhere, closer to home, politics have been to the fore following the revelation that there is an active bid for Prestwick Airport, which was rescued by the Scottish Government in 2013. This bid interest in the airport is hopefully a positive, although it is impossible to know with neither the identity of the bidder nor its intentions having been revealed. What is crucial for Prestwick Airport is that all the hard work to preserve direct employment and ensure the return to profitability of a key strategic asset, which has a major aerospace cluster in and around it, is built upon and not undone in any sale. Prestwick Airport's workforce was 354 in February, and set to rise to around 400 with ambitious expansion plans for its cargo operations. When I went airside in February with Nico Leroux, who heads the airport's cargo operations, he put the number of jobs supported by the airport at the aerospace cluster at around 4,000. The cluster includes a raft of big names in the industry, such as Storm Aviation, GE Aerospace's Caledonian operation, and Spirit Aerosystems, as well as Ryanair's major engineering facility. Back in November, Prestwick Airport announced a fifth consecutive annual profit. It reported a £3.2 million operating profit for the year to March 31, 2024. This was up from £2.1 million in the 12 months to March 31, 2023, and £1.9 million in the previous financial year. Mr. Leroux, in the exclusive interview with the Herald, highlighted expectations of more than trebling cargo revenues to in excess of £10 million a year. He declared that e-commerce flights were a game changer for the airport after winning major business from Hong Kong Air Cargo. There looks to be much to build upon. Hopefully, the future of Prestwick Airport will be one of the points of light amid the more general UK economic gloom. That article was written by Ian McConnell and read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 7th of April 2025, from the Voices section. Staff and shoppers bear the brunt as retail crime surges. Article written by David Lonsdale. 250,000 Scots are employed in retail, almost 1 in 10 people in work. It's likely that includes a member of your family, a friend, or neighbour. They do a brilliant job each and every day looking after customers, helping them find what they need, keeping shelves stocked, and delivering goods. That's why rising levels of abuse and assaults to shop workers hit so hard. The victims of this retail crime wave are friends and family whose safety is threatened and who have an ever-growing fear of being attacked at work. This is despite better legal protections for shop workers in recent years and record levels of spending on crime prevention by retailers. The Scottish Retail Consortium's, SRC's, most recent survey, published in January, suggests retail crime is at its highest level, with soaring rates of abuse and violence directed towards shop workers. Official data in February showed thefts from shops, often a precursor to abuse, spiralled by 18% last year. Meanwhile, our latest consumer polling with Opinium in March found 1 in 6 Scots had witnessed verbal or physical abuse of store staff in the past 12 months. 1 in 5 had witnessed shoplifting, seemingly an all-too-common part of the shopping experience for many and making them think twice about visiting their high street. Crime affects all of retail, from garden centres to department stores, to pharmacies, fashion wear and newsagents. However, it's not just shop workers and retailers who are affected. Crime costs stores tens of millions of pounds each year through stock loss and spending on prevention measures such as CCTV, anti-theft devices and body-worn cameras. The enormous financial outlay adds to the wider cost pressures retailers face and is ultimately paid by customers like you and I through higher prices and less convenient shopping. The SRC and others have been advocating for a greater prioritisation of retail crime by law enforcement and for extra funding to tackle the scourge. It was heartening to see this advocacy pay off with the decision in the Scottish budget to award £3 million in 2025-26 to combat retail crime. Last week, Police Scotland announced it would use the funding to create a retail crime task force. Dedicated teams of police officers will target hotspots and persistent offenders, alongside a fresh effort to improve the reporting of crime by stores and better evidence sharing. This is hugely positive and hopefully part of a concerted effort across law enforcement and the criminal justice system to turn the tide on crime against retailers. However, further action is required to bring the retail crime epidemic to heel. Firstly, we need to see a sustained prioritisation of tackling retail crime. Scottish ministers, the Scottish Police Authority, the Chief Constable and courts should reflect this in their strategic and operational plans. Most police and crime commissioners in Wales and England have an explicit commitment to tackling retail crime in their strategic plans, so why not here in Scotland? Secondly, the funding should be sustained and ideally enhanced with a multi-year commitment until there has been a substantial reduction in retail crime. We know that common triggers of intimidation and abuse towards shop workers occur when they do what the state increasingly asks for them. Retailers will soon be tasked with enforcing new mandates on the sale of single-use vapes, with possible new regulations in the pipeline on the display of alcohol in store and on the sale of foodstuffs high in salt and sugar. It's vital governments put in place public communications which explain why these measures are coming in and that poor behaviour from customers won't be tolerated. Fourthly, retailers themselves need to do better at reporting all incidents. This ensures police have the fullest possible picture of incidents and should mean more police resources allocated. The new Reporting Act should make this simpler. Finally, each of us as shoppers have a role to play. Please be respectful and considerate to shop staff and report any incidents if you see them. That way we can all play our part in creating a safe and enjoyable retail environment for fellow customers and store staff and support local jobs and the vibrancy of our retail destinations. David Lonsdale is Director of the Scottish Retail Consortium. The article was read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 7th of April 2025, from the Voices section. The corner of Scotland that's really going to feel the pain of Trump. Article written by Mark Smith. This'll do. I'm in the Cairngorms. It's a beautiful day. We're sitting by the River Avon, fire blazing, and Ian, master blender, is passing round the single malts. This is what whisky was made for, he says, indicating the scenery around us. And I know what he means. The national drink tastes of this place. It's the heartland of whisky. But the people who live here, the people who depend on it, they're worried and angry. The main source of the anger, but not the only one, is currently 4,000 miles away in the US, and also has a claim to ancient Scottish heritage, I'm afraid. You probably saw him in action last week, pointing to a list of his big, beautiful tariffs on a notice board made out of cardboard by Valerie Singleton and Peter Purvis. The UK was about halfway down the list, under Cambodia, but above South Africa, and the result was a blanket tariff of 10% on all UK goods. 10% on everything. The everything includes Scotch whisky, of course, and it's going to have monumental consequences. Exports of British drinks and spirits to the US are worth some £1.6 billion a year, and 2/3 of it Scotch whisky. The United States is by far its most important overseas market, and don't we know it? Sitting by the River Avon sampling the Tomintoul 16-year-old, very fine, and travelling around Speyside and visiting the countless distilleries in the area and meeting the people who come here, the accent you hear most is American. Next to Asia, it's the market that really matters. There may still be some hope, though, that the worst of it can be avoided. Keir Starmer says he's pushing for a deal with the US to avoid some of the tariffs. The Prime Minister has also been hinting that the government might step in to protect British interests, although if that means retaliatory British tariffs, no one believes they'd change Donald Trump's mind. We also know what happened last time. Tariffs were slapped on Scotch whisky in 2021, and there was a 25% fall in US exports, with more than £600 million lost in total, or about £1 million a day. What makes things even worse this time round is there's no end in sight. The 2021 tariffs were collateral damage in a dispute over competition between Boeing and Airbus, and it blew over in a few months, whereas the new tariffs have no obvious route to a resolution and could go on for years. The Scotch whisky trade knows this full well and is doing the maths, and they're worried. About 66,000 jobs in the UK rely on the trade, and the concern is that some firms, the smaller ones, won't make it through to the other side. It's on Speyside that you can see how damaging the tariffs could be, because you can see how positive the whisky trade has been for this corner of Scotland. The new Cabrach distillery, for example, has just started distilling its first single malt whisky a few months ago, and I visited it as work was progressing, and it has real potential to help and develop the area. There was a time when 1,000 people lived and worked in the Cabrach. Now it's fewer than 100. What happened was revolution and war. As the Industrial Revolution took hold, people moved away to the towns and cities. All the little crofts were swallowed up into a few big farms, and one by one the distilleries disappeared. Then when the First World War came, 9 of the boys and men of the community were killed, and in a community as small as this one, that had a big effect. In some ways it's never really recovered, and the Cabrach is still a remote and underpopulated area. The new distillery in the Cabrach, although on a relatively small scale, could help turn that around. You can also see as you travel across the rest of Speyside how much it relies on the distilleries around every corner and over every hill. I visited Forsyths, the company in Rothes that's been fabricating equipment for distilleries since the 1890s, where I watched the young apprentices hammering at sheets of copper in pretty much the same way apprentices did 100 years ago. The company is one of the links in a chain that, across the country, supports thousands of jobs, and the loss of millions of pounds of business due to tariffs is going to have a damaging effect. But damaging as the Trump tariffs will be, it's hard not to wonder whether we are just as bad in some ways. I've just been out and about speaking to people in the drinks and hospitality trade, and the one thing almost all of them mentioned was a lack of support from government. Indeed, most of them felt government was actively making things worse for them. There weren't many people, it has to be said, offering a toast to Prime Ministers and First Ministers. The excise duty on Scotch whisky is an obvious example. Excise duty is the one lever the government directly controls, and they could use it to offer support to the industry. And yet, in 2023, the government hiked the duty by 10%, the biggest increase for 40 years, and another 3.65% increase came into force in February after the autumn budget. Governments cannot keep doing this, telling us they're supporting Scotch whisky producers to the hilt on the one hand, while taxing them to the hilt on the other. Some of the people I spoke to in drinks and hospitality blamed what they see as a general anti-alcohol approach from government. But if governments want to promote jobs and growth, like they say they do, they'll have to accept that heavily taxing the whisky industry is not a wise choice. Not only does it hit sales growth, it doesn't even bring in the desired extra tax. Between August 2023 and November 2024, revenue from spirits duty fell by £255 million, because that's what happens. Hiking tax rates leads to less revenue, not more. Now what Trump has gone and done is make the situation even worse, and it's hard not to worry about the future. I enjoyed my trip round the distilleries of Speyside, and I especially enjoyed my little tasting session on the banks of the Avon with Ian, the master blender from Tomintoul. I'm also hopeful that an industry that's been so strong in the past will stay strong in the future. But Donald J. Trump, whose Scottish ancestors must surely have sipped a dram or two in their time, has dealt a serious blow to Scotland's greatest export. Our job is not to make it worse. That article was written by Mark Smith and read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 7th of April, 2025, from the Voices section. With friends like these, we need a tough decision on Europe. Article written by Martin Roche. Donald Trump's style of diplomacy is typically financially transactional and frequently bullying. In negotiating a trade agreement with the UK, the President is not going to change his spots. His tone may be friendly and his words soft, but he'll want Donald Trump to win. The balance of any deal must favour Trump. For him, there's no point in negotiating unless he comes out top dog and is seen globally to be top dog. In the short time the American president has been back in the White House, his way of doing business has been all about what's in it for America. Not only has he destabilised the global economy, but his habit of almost daily shifting the ground, the terms of engagement, has added to the chaos. Stock markets have tumbled, governments rocked, and business confidence slumped. Trump's way of politics sees Chancellor Rachel Reeves' efforts to spark a UK recovery dealt a substantial blow. Brexit made us poorer. Trump makes us poorer still. Labour ministers say the UK is in the best possible position to win trade deal concessions from Trump because there is an almost equal balance of trade between the UK and the US. That did not stop him last week putting 10% tariffs on all UK goods imported by the US. Will the UK be the first G7 nation to embrace the new US way of doing business with a trade deal, or economic prosperity deal as it's now named? Will Sir Keir Starmer stand smiling with Trump in front of the world's media, putting the UK's stamp of endorsement on the Trump regime? We are judged by the company we keep. Let's look at the Trump way of government. He has cast aside lessons in diplomacy learned over thousands of years. Instead of measured and well-mannered exchanges with other states, he favours a belligerent, confrontational tone and language that offends and belittles. It's an approach that seems designed more to make enemies than friends. On the domestic front, people with the legal right to be in America are being arrested without known cause or because their protests oppose US foreign policy. The heroic war deeds of Native and Afro-Americans are being erased from the record. Many of these servicemen fought and died for Europe's liberation from the Nazi jackboot. Senior black serving officers, men and women, have lost their jobs. Law firms with inclusivity programs face losing government contracts unless they drop such policies. One firm that has capitulated to the demand has agreed to provide up to $40 million worth of free work to the US government. You might call it blackmail. Radio stations funded by the US government to spread the word of democracy, peace and freedom across the globe are being closed. Canada, Greenland and Panama are the targets of a new America with territorial ambitions. Canada is a monarchy, and its head of state is our very own King Charles. Canada will remain a monarchy until the people of Canada decide otherwise. It is rumoured the UK might offer America associate membership of the Commonwealth. An America that covets, insults and threatens Canada is surely not fit for any involvement with the Commonwealth of which the King is head. In an attack on our neighbours and friends in the EU, Trump says it was set up to damage America. There is not a shred of truth in that assertion. The EU has been a steadfast ally of the USA. Trump knows the UK has been weakened by Brexit. It is knowledge he will use to squeeze every ounce of American advantage from a trade deal. The President will want beneficial trade and regulatory terms for American cars, software, media platforms, IT hardware, food and drink, and, of course, the US healthcare industry. The American health sector, including private hospital operators, pharmaceutical makers, software firms, and health insurance companies, see the NHS as a potential honeypot. They say a system ripe for privatization. In treating with Trump, the UK risks becoming a commercial vassal of the US, trapped inside a system structured to always favour America. And the closer we get to the US, the harder it becomes to reset our trade with our nearest neighbours and most trustworthy friends in Europe. The blindingly obvious way to go is to rejoin the EU. We know how to do business in Europe. We know the rules and how they work. We helped make many of them. We'd have full access to Europe's giant consumer, public procurement and business-to-business markets. Its rapidly growing defence market would open to us. Most of all, we share with a majority in Europe a similar outlook on how democracy works and how the global order should look. Donald Trump will not like the UK preferring Europe over America. He is likely to retaliate. Decoupling the UK from the USA has significant risks that cannot be lightly dismissed. We can't avoid making a difficult choice. There is medium-term pain for us whichever way we go. But Trump's love affair with protectionism and his antipathy to Europe and the free trade model is not in our national interest. Drawing ever closer to the EU will strengthen and grow our economy, giving us greater political muscle in the world. It will help shield us from the capriciousness of Donald Trump and the growing might of the Chinese economy. Our Brexit isolation makes us vulnerable and exposed. Europe is not a perfect answer, but it is the nearest to perfect that's credible. Part of managing the risks of this new world is to be found in a concrete and meaningful rapprochement with the EU. Martin Roche had a career in international public relations and is a member of the Executive Committee of the European Movement in Scotland. The article was read to you by Elizabeth.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Tuesday, the 8th of April 2025, from the business section. Hotel on North Coast 500 road trip tourist route for sale. This article is by Brian Donnelly. An hotel and restaurant with a strong history and solid income levels has been put on the market. The 7-room hotel sits on the renowned North Coast 500 tourist route and is described as having full occupancy during peak months. Leslie Callender of ASG Commercial said the Holborn Hotel and the Red Pepper restaurant in Thurso is a reputable business in one of the Highlands' most scenic and accessible locations. The agent said, "This year-round business has a strong history with solid income levels and profitability. The Holborn Hotel in Thurso presents a rare opportunity to acquire a thriving small hotel business in a prime location along Scotland's iconic North Coast 500 route. Situated in the vibrant heart of Thurso, this well-established property has built a strong reputation for quality, hospitality, consistent profitability and year-round trade, attracting locals, tourists and business travellers alike. Built over a century ago, the Holborn Hotel blends traditional Highland charm with modern comfort and functionality, the agent added. The business is driven by 3 robust revenue streams: accommodation, food and beverage sales, making it a sound and sustainable investment. Mr. Callender said, "A standout feature is the Holborn's impressive bar, which comfortably accommodates over 60 guests indoors and an additional 20 in a stylish covered outdoor seating area. This lively space is a favourite among locals and visitors, offering a wide selection of draft beers, spirits, wines and soft drinks. A popular bar menu, combined with friendly service and regular live music events, makes it a key social hub in the town, boosting both footfall and revenue. For those seeking a more refined dining experience, the Red Pepper restaurant offers a sophisticated setting with 40 covers. Its contemporary interior, featuring hardwood floors and ambient lighting, creates an intimate space where guests can enjoy a carefully curated à la carte menu. The restaurant prides itself on using locally sourced ingredients, including fresh seafood from nearby Scrabster Harbour, adding a distinct regional flavour to its offerings. The hotel also boasts a private dining room, ideal for family celebrations, business functions or special events, providing an exclusive experience in a beautifully appointed setting. The Holborn Hotel has enjoyed full occupancy during peak tourist months from May to September, thanks in part to its excellent central location and its position on the North Coast 500. With consistent trading across all departments and a loyal customer base, this hotel is a true turnkey opportunity for new owners. ASG Commercial said the hotel is offered at a guide price of £475,000 for the freehold, with a leasehold option also potentially available. That article was by Brian Donnelly. This is from the Herald Scotland of Tuesday the 8th of April 2025 from the Voices section. Will the 2026 Scottish Parliament elections offer comic relief? This article is by Lorne Jackson. Comic relief. With the 2026 Scottish Parliament elections on the horizon, reader Gordon McRae is assessing the philosophy of potential candidate for First Minister, Anna Sarwar. It's claimed his principles are inspired by the ideas of Marx, Lenin and Maclean, notes Gordon. Unfortunately, the full truth is they're based on Groucho Marx, John Lennon and Lex Maclean. Lacking a lick. The other afternoon, diary correspondent Linda McKinnon visited her 80-year-old mum. While they were watching TV together, Linda's mum decided to enjoy a little snack, and so proposed sauntering to the kitchen to get herself a yoghurt. "I'll get it, Mum," said Linda, and proceeded to do so. When Linda handed over the small individual tub, Mum looked scandalised. "Where's the lid?" hissed the elderly lady. "I put it in the bin," said Linda. "But I always lick the lid," said Mum, in a voice that clearly indicated that she was now harbouring serious regrets about having given birth to such a wilful and wayward daughter. Linda tells the diary she might be 80 years old, but in future Mum can get her own yoghurt. Where's the beef? When reader Bert Holliston was growing up in Saltcoats, there was a fine example of nominative determinism in Dockhead Street, the location of that magnificently meaty emporium, Charles Grubb, butcher. Talking balls. Time to take one of the diary's regular detours into the sporting world. Ian Noble from Carstairs Village tells us that he recently discovered that a Masters golf tournament for professional women golfers is being mooted. In which case, says Ian, surely it will have to be called the Mistresses. Second Sight. Entrepreneurial Steve McComish tells us that if he ever decides to open an optician's practice, he intends to market it with the line, "Buy your lenses here if you ever want to see your children again." Half-baked gadget. The diary mentioned a TV show about air fryers which one of our readers watched. David Morrow tuned in to the same program where he learned the grisly truth about these gizmos. "Imagine my disappointment," he says, "when I discovered that they are misnamed because they actually bake food rather than fry it." Adds David, "I suppose Air Baker doesn't have quite the same appeal. It sounds more like an airline run by Paul Hollywood." And finally, Barking Mad. Concerned reader Mike Fitzgerald says, "When I see lovers' initials carved in a tree, I don't think, how romantic. I think, who takes a knife on a date?" That was by Lorne Jackson.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels, rate and review, and to tell your friends about our service.